Thank you for joining us today, everyone, and thank you, Steve and Matt, for making some time. Just by way of introduction, my name's Soren Reichelt, and I'm the Head of Digital here at Tsimos Commercial. And we're joined by, for those who haven't met him, Steve Tsimos, our Managing Director and Founder. Steve, give us a hello for the audience.
Good morning, all. Morning, Soren. Morning, Matt.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you for making this. And Matt Brown, Director of Sales and Leasing. Matt, how are you today, mate?
Very well. Yourself?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Really do appreciate you guys making some time over the past few weeks as we're going on this this journey of really exploring commercial property and all the different different aspects and asset classes and bits and pieces to, I guess, inform our audience about the opportunities that are out there in commercial at the moment. Now, one of the questions that we wanted to explore today is, when is the right time to sell your commercial property? Steve, you and I have had multiple conversations about, is there ever really a time to sell, all of those sorts of things, and how the market impacts that. And we really want to get a bit of a Q&A happening as well. So if anyone in the audience does have any questions through this process, please feel free to ask them through the chat. We'll certainly get to answer them as well. So Matt, look, I guess kick off this this conversation, a bit of an introduction here. I mean, what are we really seeing out there in the market at the moment from a commercial property perspective?
Look, we're seeing actually pretty good demand across the board. Obviously, everyone knows the industrial at the moment is seeing huge demand. It is becoming quite strong in the market. We've seen that coming out of COVID last year. But even now, even yesterday, we're seeing really good demand for even retail property to buy and also to lease. So it's been really good, really promising.
Yeah, it's good to see as well. Obviously, coming out of COVID and all of the, I guess, JobKeeper and job supports that were there as well, that the market is bouncing back and we're seeing that demand. Now, Steve, I guess when we were talking about this, when is the right time to sell your commercial property? You had a fairly long conversation with me about all those different attributes. I mean, talk us through that question. I mean, when is the right time to sell?
Well, having been in the game a number of decades, sad to say, but one of the rules that we live by is the best time to sell is when everyone's buying, and of course, conversely, the best time to buy is when everyone's selling. So at the moment, we're in a boom bubble, which has surprised me as much as it has anybody else in our industry since COVID. We didn't think we'd come back as quickly and as strongly as we have. So the short answer is that if you are thinking of selling, I've not seen a better time in my 35 years to sell, because a lot of demand and very limited supply.
And it is interesting, I mean, what those drivers are for people to sell. I mean, obviously there's different situations that people find themselves in, or different investment opportunities that people are looking to attack. I mean, Matt, from your perspective, I mean, how does someone really decide when's the right time to move on their commercial property?
Well, obviously at the moment we're seeing various markets. Let's talk about the industrial market. We believe it's peaking at the moment. It's very strong. We're getting a lot of inquiry. Now is a great time to sell if you've got an industrial property out there, especially if it's vacant or it's becoming vacant, because there's a lot of owner occupiers in the market looking to buy into that commercial property. At the same time, if you're looking to cash up as a business or as a personal to then buy into something bigger at the moment, that's another reason that people do it. Obviously, the other flip side is that maybe people have got some concerns about getting tenants, and I don't think that's a problem at the moment in industrial. But if you maybe got a retail property and you're thinking about, am I going to be able to get the same rent or a tenant without having long delays, maybe now's the time to be selling as well. So that's some of the reasons why people will just sort of decide, look, let's do it. And we're also seeing other reasons from people coming out of residential into commercial. We're seeing lots of demand.
And Steve, I guess in that, some of those stories, I guess, over the past few weeks that Tsimos has had some stock into the market, but also a lot of inquiries. I mean, what are we really seeing out there at the moment in terms of stock levels from your perspective?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to Matt's point, if I may.
Yeah.
I don't want to disagree with you, Matt, but I challenge you a little bit. The retail market has had a spike in the last month or 6 weeks. I think you'd agree with that. I'm sure that the inquiry rates that's come through, the number of retail properties we're leasing as opposed to industrial seems to have had a spike. Would you agree?
I agree. It's been surprising, and we've had some very good inquiry come through. I mean, we only listed a property last week in for sale in a retail property, and I wasn't sure how many inquiries we're going to get, and we've had more than 50 inquiries in a matter of 4 or 5 days. So it's certainly a very promising sign.
Exactly. So back to your question. Say again, sorry, Siren.
Well, I guess the interesting thing there is some of the stories that you're seeing out there in terms of stock and bits and pieces at the moment. Retail, you just mentioned there. We've been talking a fair bit about industrial and the low stock levels. Do we have any stories around what's really happening and how that's impacting prices at the moment?
Oh, look, we've seen a lot of results from ourselves and other agents in our industry, in our field, our colleagues, and there's been record prices, quite frankly, pre-COVID record prices. So it's been an astounding thing, and it is the lack of demand. Owner-occupiers still form a strong part of the market, but the investors are now sort of catching up, and they're also seeking and looking to buy some property. So the competition for good property, and let's just understand that when we're buying, we're looking at certain, you'll excuse our property manager in the background there. We're looking at the 3 Ps, position, position, position. And that's what it goes down to. But at the end of the day, the supply is very limited. And without repeating myself, it is a fantastic time to put a property on the market because there's a lot of buyers out there.
And Matt, do we have any specific examples where you've seen some good and maybe potentially some not so good in terms of what's happening out there from a sale perspective?
Look, from a sale perspective, we've seen other agents, as Steve touched on it before. We've been to a number of auctions. I think there's a lot of agents as well also going to a lot of other agents' auctions and seeing what's really getting out there and how many people are attending these auctions. And we only went to one recently that was a warehouse. It was short-term left on the lease, and a lot of owner occupiers should have been looking at that property. I got there was 80 odd people at the auction, and it went for more than $500,000 over the top of the reserve. Now, coming out of COVID and thinking that you're getting these sort of numbers to a property auction and also those numbers over the top of reserve, it's going to extremes.
Yeah, you're starting to see a lot more people interested in purchasing. And Matt, I mean, you were telling me a story this morning about some potential investors that were actually being very specific about the properties they are interested in potentially.
And that's the other side of things. We're seeing people, and especially businesses out there, saying, well, I can't compete against the other 80 people inquiring on a property, and I really want to buy this particular property for my business in future, or this is my direct requirement. And we're seeing a lot of that come through, and we're basically acting as advocates at the moment to source out those properties for those individuals, and that's becoming more and more apparent as we go on.
And I think if sorry to interrupt, but if I can say that we need to understand what's driving the market at the moment, and there's probably 3 reasons. Low interest rates, which is a given, the lack of stock, and particularly the lack of new development stock, which as a result of COVID hasn't really come on the market because a lot of those projects have been put on hold, and the building programs have been slowed down. So, and the third one, of course, is pent-up demands post-COVID. So when you consider those things, once more stock comes on the market, particularly new development stock, we might see it slow a little bit, but the information that I'm gathering and from and researching from particularly the major banks, they're looking at a substantial increase in property values going through to the end of next year and beyond. And if the banks are saying that, and they've got a very good research team, I think, and also don't forget they control the money, then we're seeing an ongoing continuation of this until such time as the stock levels start to meet demand levels.
And I think that I totally agree, and I think that we're not going to see, in my opinion, a slowdown in the market this year, or maybe not even next year. We're still seeing a lot of people come out of residential. They might be selling in residential and seeing those amazing prices in there, putting their money across into commercial as well, to get that higher return. And that's even more demand coming in to our market. So yes, if you're thinking of selling your commercial property, now is the time.
And thanks for agreeing, Matt, because you really do.
And Steve, I mean, there's obviously some balance points there in terms of when you've had a certain amount of capital improvement in the investment that you've made, and the cost of selling is obviously something that people need to consider as well.
Yeah.
That was something that you and I were sort of talking, I guess, sort of mid-pandemic. It's a very difficult time to sell when the prices are low because of the compounding cost of sale. Just talk us through, I guess, that process. I mean, how do people really work out when's the right time to move on their property from that perspective as well?
Yeah, well, it's obviously a very personal reason for selling a property, and there are a number of reasons people sell properties. But in terms of changeover, if you're selling in a market where you're going to get a substantially better price than you expect, the cost of selling and buying another property and reinvesting with stamp duties and agent costs, etc., probably would not be as impactful as if you're selling perhaps in a lower market. In other words, and depending on the property, but the capital gain that you could realise at the moment on properties, depending on how long you've owned them and held them, is substantial. So, as I say, it's a great time to sell a property and surprise yourself with the sort of price that you could achieve.
Well, I guess, and in that process, I mean, this is a short Q&A for us, but in that process, I mean, what's really the starting point from your perspective, Matt, for someone who might be potentially looking at saying, well, what do I have in my portfolio and how can I potentially see and start to get some of those numbers together? Because as Steve just mentioned, then there's all of the, how did we enter into that investment and where are we sitting today? But what's some advice that you'd give to people, Matt, in that scenario?
Yeah, look, I think people are looking at various properties in their portfolio and saying, which one do I sell? How do I go about it? And really, you've got to work out who's going to be the target buyer for that property. Is it going to be an investor? Is it going to be an owner-occupier? What's my likely price on paper? And then what's my likely price at the moment if I take it to, say, an auction, and how many people are going to be interested in this property? There is a greater difference between, obviously, a vacant property at the moment and an investment property, because there's a lot of demand out there from owner occupiers.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a property in your portfolio that you know is going to be subject to a lot of repairs coming up, and you think that the moment before I go and spend thousands of dollars on repairs, I can put it on the market, I can gain extra capital at the moment from the rise in the market, and then move on and buy something else for your portfolio.
And I think that we've seen that on a number of occasions with our existing clients, where they've had the property for 30 or 40 years, a new roof, perhaps an asbestos roof, perhaps it needs new plumbing, new electricity. So, and what we're seeing is saying, well, if I can realise that sort of money, I don't have to spend $50,000 or $100,000 on the building and then go and buy something else. So, and we've seen that a lot of older buildings that, last year we thought might have been worth, pre-COVID might have been worth 800,000 or 900,000. We're selling for 1.1, 1.2. So that's a substantial amount of money over a period of 12 months.
Yeah, and obviously everyone wants to think that we'll understand where the peak of the market is. I mean, do you guys believe there's a peak at the moment, or you've sort of said that there's maybe a year or something that everyone's tipping for that growth? What's your read on where we're sitting in terms of the market at the moment?
Mate, if I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Yeah, that's right. I want to understand your opinion.
It's very difficult to pick the peak, very difficult to pick the trough. But, I think it'll be sustainable for at least a couple of years. And I think we will see ongoing price increases over the next couple of years. As I say, once the new development stock hits the marketplace. And of course, the other thing is that when interest rates go up, it has an impact on properties, particularly commercial properties. But I just can't see it on the radar at the moment. I think interest rates aren't going anywhere.
I agree. I don't think we're in a short, sharp peak at the moment that you can sit and go, now's the time, and it's not going to happen next month. I think we're in a, let's call it a consistent strong demand of real estate, and it continue for at least the next year, maybe 2 years, maybe even more, because all the other factors around us are still pointing towards everyone buy industrial or commercial property, or buy property in effect. So I think it'll keep going.
Yeah, and that's great news, right?
Now, I was just going to ask Matt just a question I want to have a chat about, and we've spoken about this before. Land values, where are they going at the moment? I mean, do you see them increasing?
I think that land values are certainly increasing. And I think that the land's always going to be the component that does go up in value. And demand at the moment, obviously, to buy land to use for later on, whether you're splitting it up or you're developing it or you're using it for yourself, it's always been very important. And finding factories at the moment that are, even a building and got extra vacant land at the back, we're seeing huge demand for those at the moment as well. So certainly land's the point. So, I think to cap on at the moment, it's always been don't wait to buy real estate and wait. And that demand is sort of, everyone is seeing that at the moment. I think it's a very good opportunity for people to get out there and buy.
So just following on from that point, if land values are going up, then the cost of new developments will be going up. So per square metre rate of a new industrial or commercial property has to go up purely by numbers. I mean, if the cost of buildings going up, cost of land's going up, the retail price of the product must go up, surely.
Correct. And then add in all that demand from various markets, it's definitely going up.
Oh, fantastic to understand that as well, guys. So look, I guess for us, we wanted to just do this quick, short, sharp Q&A around, when is the right time to sell your commercial property? And I think, Steve, the point out of this is there's probably never been a better time to really start looking at what price you could attract if you are interested in moving that property on. So how do people get in touch with you or Matt in terms of potentially starting that process to see what their property's worth?
Well, our website, obviously, our personal mobile phone numbers. You can contact us anytime. Happy to do an appraisal. But I think at the end of the day, if you're selling, just remember one thing, you're in charge of the sale price to a great degree. So if you're not happy with the sale price, you don't have to sell it. So if you're looking at selling and thinking seriously about selling, we can give you an appraisal, test the market. I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
Fantastic. All right, well, we will be sharing this out on our YouTube channel, and we're also on Spotify now, so I'll let everyone know how to get access into those things. Thank you guys for making some time. I'll see you again next fortnight for our next webinar. Cheers, guys.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Matt.